Hello there friends and welcome. For today's Pathfinder video, I want to finally cover the Slayer class. With this build, your character will be able to dual wield at extreme efficiency with up to 6 main hand attacks, 3 offhand ones, not to mention all the attacks of opportunity which will also come from our main hand, and even extra attacks like bites and gores. Thanks to Trickster, you'll have pretty much 50% critical chance at super high critical damage, amazing for dual wielding, with even higher than 20 base attack bonus, something usually only achieved by the Legend Mythic path. Your damage will be super high too, we are talking about definitely higher than 100 damage on a normal hit, close to 150 most likely, as all of these come from the same single attack. And as far as critical hits, definitely higher than 500 damage, which is further empowered by the fact we have Wealth D6 when it comes to sneak attacks on every hit. Our armor class might not be high, but we don't really need it, as we have either reach from size spells or through proper positioning. So without further ado, let us get started on our Slayer build and guide. Alright, so the Slayer class is actually one of the most solid in the entire game. It has a lot of powerful mechanics stacked together in one neat package. You have sneak attack progression, not as much as Rogue, but still plenty of sneak dice, and this will highly be increased through the Trickster Mythic path. The Study Target ability, which serves as another way of enhancing our attack rolls and damage against any target that you apply your sneak attack to. So basically by just attacking the target, it's more than enough to proc this. High base attack bonus progression, the best in the whole game. And most importantly, loads and loads of extra feats, just like a fighter. And they are split between the Ranger combat style feats, any other generic feat that you can also pick, and uniquely enough, the special rogue talents, including the best ones, such as the spelling attack, opportunist, and so on. When it comes to archetypes, my favorite by far is Spawn Slayer. Sure, you lose Swift Study Target, which doesn't matter because the reality is, well, first, Swift actions are limited to just once per round. And second, whenever you apply sneak attack damage to the enemy, you automatically apply Study Target as well, so it's not really that big of a loss. What you do gain though makes a big difference. You get bonuses against enemies of all sizes, so large, upgrading into huge, gargantuan, and even colossal at the end, although I don't think there's any colossal enemy in the game. I might be wrong, but even the big ones like the Scary cap out at gargantuan. Anyways, the best part about this is that a lot of the enemies in the game, especially the powerful demon outsiders, they are of large size and bigger, usually large to huge. So you'll get a lot of free bonuses against them, to further stack even more bonuses to AB and damage when combined with your study target. When it comes to multiclassing, you can of course multiclass Slayer, as it is a high base attack bonus class, although starting from level 10 plus, you'll be able to choose the advanced rogue talents, and some are pretty powerful. I prefer to keep Slayers pure. The main reason is, well, you continue your sneak attack progression, your high base attack bonus, your feats, but most importantly, the improved query ability you get at level 19. Sure, it comes late, but it's more than worth it, because it lets you apply query as a free action, and free actions are unlimited, which means you can actually apply query to all of the enemies as soon as battle starts, and still retain your actual actions, so your full attacks or your movements. As far as race, as usual I like going with humans, even if Slayer has a lot of extra feats. The more feats we have at the early game, the stronger your character will be at the early game as well, which for me matters a lot, especially if you are on, let's say, hard or unfair. Still, because of how many feats we get, you can certainly go with any other race of your choice. For background, as usual, Street Urchin and Pickpocket, we already have martial weapons proficiency as a Slayer, and we really want as high initiative as we can get. For ability point allocation, Strength is the way to go. Yes, this will be a dual wielding character. The thing is, through the Slayer talents and the Ranger combat style feats, we can outright bypass the dexterity requirement for the dual wielding feats, which lets us then fully focus into strength for as high damage as possible, especially because of all the size bonuses we'll add to our strength. As a matter of fact, it is way easier to get higher strength than dexterity. I'd also get 16 constitution for some nice hit points. Honestly, 12 dexterity is more than enough. You'll be swimming in both normal attacks and attacks of opportunities, even with just +1 to your dexterity bonus when you consider the ever-ready mythic ability, combat reflexes, and dexterity buffs. What you can do, however, as usual, is dump, definitely charisma, which is useless for you, and then you can choose between either intelligence or wisdom, depending on if you want an extra skill point or not. If you go with human, it's safer to dump intelligence, as you already get an extra skill, and then put the rest into dexterity. As far as your skill point allocation, 100% athletics because we are a high strength build, and this has amazing synergy with the Trickster athletics trick to easily pass any saving throw, restore debuffs affecting your character, and even achieve higher than 20 base attack bonus, as I will show you later on. I also recommend you go with Use Magic Device, even if you start with low charisma, it doesn't matter because it's very easy to increase these through skill buffs and gear as well. The main reason is to cast some very powerful buffs from spell scrolls, and the other skill point is really up to you. I'd actually go for Perception here, just in case. It's always nice to have this on multiple characters to find secrets with higher chance. You might also consider going with Trickery, if only for the Trickery 2 special Trickster ability that lets you dispel enemies based on Trickery. The issue is we only get that kinda late game, but at least for the final boss, it can help if you are on unfair. Alright, as far as your level 1 feats, this will be a dual wielding character, so there isn't much of a point into picking power attack and cleave, unlike for two-handers. What I like picking, even just at level 1, first improve at initiative. The more I play this game, the more I realize how important initiative really is. No matter if you are on real time or turn-based, the ability to act before the enemy can react means you catch them flat-footed for much lower armor class, even at the early levels. Second, since we are a dual wielding character who does get penalties to AB, I like to already start with weapon focus. Dual wielding we'll get for free at level 2 from our Slayer talent. As far as your weapon choice, you have basically 3: Rapier, Scimitar, or Kukris. They all have the highest critical range possible, and we do want that because we are dual wielding, and the more attacks we have with higher critical range, the more damage and the more free attacks we generate through our party through the outflank feat later on. My preferred choice is actually Kukris, because they are light weapons, which means you take less of a penalty when dual wielding with them, which helps quite a lot for the early game, especially if you are on unfair. And as always, I'm all about early game power too, for a fun overall experience. For deity, since we are going with Trickster, any that allows the chaotic Trickster alignments, someone like Aiden is perfect. At level 2, combat style feat, 2-weapon combat and 2-weapon fighting, so now we can properly dual wield. And if you went with Kukris, at a lower penalty as well. At level 3 we get our first dice of sneak attack, so what I like to pick now is Accomplished Sneak Attacker to improve it by yet another 1d6. At level 4 increase strength, which is also what you want to increase on all of the other levels. You can already go for combat trick, this is for generic feats, and then outflank. The only issue is, unless you have a fighter or another Slayer party member, you most likely won't have outflank already on your other characters. I'd rather delay it for level 5 or, to me, level 7 even. I actually like picking Slippery Mind here to increase our will saving throws, especially since you can just buff your dexterity, and this can help a lot early game against mind affecting conditions. At level 5, if you have Scylla on your party or other high base attack bonus characters, then you can go with Outflank now. Otherwise, delay it for level 7, which is when all of the medium base attack bonus characters get it, including pets. So either outflank or combat reflexes and switch the one you don't pick for level 7. For level 6, combat style feat, 2-weapon combat and improve your 2-weapon fighting, so we already get another attack with our offhand. For level 7, either outflank if you didn't pick it before, or combat reflexes now. We are very close to getting super high critical range for our Kukris, so combat reflexes and outflank will come just in time. For level 8, at last, improve at critical, and then your weapon of choice, Rapier, Scimitar, or in my case, Kukri. As I've just said, we now have 15 to 20 critical range with our numerous attacks per round from dual wielding, and also outflank plus combat reflexes to really add a lot of free attacks of opportunity to our party members. For our level 9 feat, this is when I would get power attack. Yes, this does work even for light weapons like Kukris, and while the damage boost is reduced when dual wielding when you compare it to two-handing, it can still add a lot of extra damage, especially since it will be multiplied on critical hits. The reason I only pick power attack now is that, well, it also adds a penalty to attack bonus, but at this point you already have enough buffs and study target bonuses to easily make up for the penalty to AB. At level 10, you'll start getting access to the advanced rogue talents. Some are pretty good, but what I prefer to pick now is combat style feat and then greater 2-weapon fighting, to cap out our attacks with our offhand as early as we can. At level 11, go for Dazzling Display, only so we can pick Shattered Defenses later on. The reality is, as with any Trickster build, your level 13, 15 and 17 feats are set in stone. You'll get the improved Trickster critical feats here, so we don't really have space until around level 19, except for our extra feats from Slayer. For level 12, Opportunist, it basically means an extra attack per round. So why not? The more the better. to easily slice and dice through enemies, even bosses on unfair. Attacks of opportunity are made from your highest base attack bonus, just like your first attack, so even better. Now before you enter level 13, this is pretty important, you need to pick the Perception rank 2 mythic trick as a trickster, so you can then qualify for the special trickster feats. So be sure to level your character up to mythic rank 4. I suppose in some cases you can access this as early as level 11, although I find it a bit difficult. Usually by doing all of the content, level 13 is when you would get mythic 4, at least to me. So as usual for level 13, improved critical and kukri. By now you'll truly start feeling how OP tricksters are, especially when dual wielding, because of your super high critical range. For level 14, I would go with Dispelling Attack. The main reason is at this point you're close to entering chapter 4, and from that onwards, so chapter 4, 5 and 6, is when the demon enemies really start coming pre-buffed with a lot of powerful effects. Dispelling Attack will attempt to dispel their buffs, and since it is applied per hit and you are dual wielding, well, you have a lot of chances of dispelling enemies. For level 15, the second Trickster special feat. For level 16, Combat Trick and Shatter Defenses at last. For level 17, the last Trickster special critical feat, for even more critical damage. For level 18, as a Slayer talent, you have a few different choices. Wearing Strike can help, although it's not that much needed. Reducing the enemy's constitution per hit can eventually add up. The thing is, we already do so high damage on our critical hits, which are at 50% chance or so on, that it kinda won't matter that much. Plus, many bosses in the game are immune to ability damage, especially the late game bosses, which is at the point we are at now. Amusingly enough, you can also go for a familiar, just for the hair familiar, so you stack even more initiative with another +4. What you might also consider picking now is Combat Trick and then Double Slice. The reason I can't pick it now is because I don't have any dexterity boosting gear on my character, but so long as you have a belt of dexterity and so on, you will qualify for this. It can add some extra damage to your offhand attacks because of our very high strength. So go with either Wearing Strike or Double Slice. At level 19, at last you'll get the super overpowered Improved Query ability. And as far as your last generic feat, I would go for Meta Magic and Completely Normal Spell. The main reason is to add more spell uses of the super powerful Trickster spells, such as the ultimate spell, Trick Fate, for 100% critical chance. I don't think anything else at this point will be as efficient as Completely Normal Spell. Remember that as a Trickster, your party members can also get all of these feats, that is, the Trickster special critical feats and also Completely Normal Spell, which is great for some spellcasters. Once again, to add more spell slots, and even turn level 1 spells into infinite use cantrips. Now, keeping progression up to level 20 won't matter that much as a Slayer, because you basically only get another +1 to your study target. What you can do now is go for Ranger and Demon Slayer, because the favorite enemy ability will get you an extra +2 to attack rolls and damage against all demon enemies. On the other hand, you might as well just skip progression into Spawn Slayer for the +1 to study target, and if you plan on doing the first DLC Inevitable Access, you also fight a lot of non-demonic enemies there, so I suppose this can be a bit more efficient. As far as your last Slayer talent, if you went with Slayer, since you aren't using swift actions, you might consider Arcane Strike to add just a little bit more damage to your dual wielding attacks. Otherwise, Blind Fight is always an option, as some of the late game enemies, the final boss at least, they have concealment sources not bypassed by True Seeing. Alright, now let's talk Mythic Progression for our Slayer Trickster. As with pretty much almost all melee builds, Close to the Abyss is the best by far for the extra gore attack, and our sneak attack, damage from Trickster and Slayer, plus study target bonuses will also be applied to this gore. For your first mythic ability, if you are on unfair, then definitely Last Stand, because we are a glass cannon of sorts. For hardened core though, you can definitely delay Last Stand for later since you don't take double damage. I would then pick Ever Ready instead. It is one of the strongest mythic abilities in the game. For the super high bonuses it gives to your attacks of opportunity, especially because right at Mythic 2, we can already pick Mythic, Improved Critical and then Kukri. So now all Kukris have ×3 critical multiplier. I prefer to pick this instead of Mythic Weapon Fighting or Mythic Power Attack. It's another reason why we get Ever Ready at Mythic rank 1, since we get Improved Critical and Mythic Critical so early, as a Slayer with high base attack bonus. For Mythic level 3, well, if you pick Last Stand at level 1 for unfair, then now is when you would pick Ever Ready. Otherwise, Defensive Study doesn't matter that much. It increases your armor class as a Slayer, but we are a glass cannon character with reach. Armor class doesn't really matter that much for us. And you can always ride the Triceratops pet that you get for free at the end of chapter 2, even if you don't have a pet. Just remember to buff its armor class. Elemental Barrage sadly does not work with melee attacks anymore, otherwise it would have highly increased our damage. Leading Strike I prefer to leave for mounted characters like Scylla. Well, I'd say you can pick Mythic Charge if you have a SKALD with Palms. But my preferred choice here would be Unrelenting Assault. I don't tend to pick this usually because I don't have space for most of my builds. But for dual wielding characters, since the bonus applies to both your weapons, it can help. You can also go with Thundering Blows here if you prefer. As I said, there's a lot of choices depending on your preferred playstyle. As for your first Mythic trick, Arcana 1 as usual to increase the enhancement bonus of items you find. You don't have to personally identify them with a Trickster to actually get the bonus. Also, just at Mythic 3 we already get an extra 2 dice of sneak attack. Kinda fun for a Trickster. For Mythic 4, I would actually go for Mythic Power Attack. If you are an unfair, you might prefer Mythic Weapon Fighting to reduce the dual wielding penalty. It's just that if you went with CRITS, you already have higher AB. Now this is very important, as usual. Perception rank 1 and then Perception 2, so you qualify your whole party members, including your pets and your main character, for the super OP Trickster critical feats. I wanted to do something different with this build, so pick abilities that I don't usually pick, which is why I decided to go for Thundering Blows. It's true that this is just once per round, but we have so many attacks that eventually you're going to miss with one of them, so why not? Remember, there is always Mythic Charge too, and Last Stand if you didn't pick it before. Then go for Athletics rank 1 here. This already lets you remove debuffing effects from yourself at a pretty easy to do check, so kinda good. Especially for, let's say, level drain and permanent stuff on the higher difficulties. For Mythic level 6 you have two choices, either Mythic Improved Initiative or Mythic to Weapon Fighting. Because at this point you're already at the middle of chapter 4, where the enemies start getting a lot higher initiative, you might as well pick it now, or you can just delay it for level 8 too. Mythic to Weapon Fighting can always help because it reduces the attack penalty for both your main and offhand. And then be sure to pick Knowledge World 1 here, plus Athletics rank 2. When you combine this with your high athletics, you pretty much will always make any saving throw in the game, no matter if you are fighting enemies on unfair. For Mythic 7, well, either Mythic Charge or Last Stand. And then Lore Nature rank 1. The extra food buff you get when resting for your companions, well, it doesn't matter that much, but can help because it's basically for free. And at last, Athletics rank 3. I usually don't pick this. Before I tended to pick the Trickster Wizard spellbook through UMD rank 3. But ever since the nerf to Elemental Barrage for melee, I don't think it's as needed. Athletics rank 3 though, the main benefit is this lets you achieve higher than 20 base attack bonus when you are already a high BAB character like a Slayer, because if it is equal to your character level, it will become equal to your Athletics plus 5, so at level 20, 25. For Mythic level 8, Mythic Improved Initiative at last, if you didn't pick it before, just in time for the toughest Demon Lord battles. And then you might as well pick Lore Religion rank 1 here. At Mythic rank 8, definitely Knowledge World 2, as this works as another way of increasing your critical chance even further, because it turns every single one you would roll into a 20. So you'll not only go from an automatic failure to a critical success. And it also works for saving throws, perfect overall, because this affects your entire party. The only reason I don't pick this earlier is because we're kinda stuck with Perception 2 and Athletics 2. For Mythic rank 9, Last Stand if you didn't pick it before. For your last two Mythic tricks, if you went with Trickery, you can go with Trickery 1 here and Trickery 2, so you can easily dispel even, let's say, the final boss with complete ease. While the penalty might seem like much, it's not really, because there are so many ways of increasing your Trickery beyond that, and this takes the full final modified value into account, including all of the buffs you'll be stacking on top of it. Otherwise, Lore Religion rank 2, and then you can pick 2 domains of your choice. Animal, I mean, there's nothing really as efficient as this, even at the late game, because it will grant you an animal companion. And I know you're going to say, but we only get this at Mythic level 9. It is true, but even at the end game, an animal companion is simply better than anything else, just the way it is. There are some other neat choices like Artifice for the Lead Blade spell. War, for example, can give your characters a very high bonus to damage, though it does have very low duration of just 1 round. We won't have high wisdom with this character, so don't bother with the domains that scale based on wisdom like Guarded Hearth. And of course for the pet, well, you can really choose anything at this point, since you are already at the end game. I just like the dog and wolf above all others. As far as Mythic level 10, there is always Mythic Sneak Attacker. Since we are dual wielding, the more sneak attack damage we get, the better. Mythic Weapon Focus won't matter that much, and I suppose you can even go for something like Follower's Attacks. For a greater Mythic trick, I'd pick Knowledge World rank 3. If you're playing with Respec on, this lets all your party members, pets included, have access to basically any feat without the prerequisite. You can bypass them just fine. From the earliest level they start at, a character like Scylla, for example, can have access to any feat as early as level 2 when respecing. Alright, so let's cover gear for our Slayer Trickster now. The amulet, as always, valid access magnifying amulet for the end game. As early as chapter 4, you definitely want to stack as much strength as possible. Before that, amulets that enhance your initiative. For armor, we don't really need armor, so it's best to focus on the ones with good passives. The Chainmail of Camaraderie, as always, is my preferred choice here. An extra +4 damage when flanking targets is super powerful for a dual-wielding character. For the robes and clothing, the Cloth of Heavy Fortification can help avoid sneak attacks and critical hits in the rare events that you get hit. For belts, at the start, belts that increase your strength, later strength and constitution, and ultimately all physical stats. You can, however, also go with the Mangling Frenzy belt if you have a SKALD party member to enrage your characters, as the extra damage on critical hits can be very powerful for a dual-wielding character focused exactly on them. For gloves, Fencer's Gift are always amazing for dual-wielding characters, thanks to the bonus to the offhand damage, but since we are a Slayer who eventually gets the improved Query ability, the big game gloves can help a lot when you finally get them at level 19. For the nice second debuff to basically all enemies, since you have this as a free action. Also an untyped -2 penalty to AC. For the boot slots, you have two choices. I like the Expedition boots for the huge bonus to athletics, so we can really make any save in the game thanks to the Athletics 2 mythic trick. But if you like charging and have a SKALD to provide pounds, the boots of Stampede can add some nice damage too. For the hat slot, early game probably helmets that increase initiative, but eventually the Hat of the Bitter End is by far the best choice because of the huge stacking bonus to AB. As far as glasses, Broken Trickster is my preferred pick for the best one overall. Even if you don't have a use for Wisdom and Charisma, the 20, Unpenetrable, damage reduction this gives you is quite powerful, just in case. But if you went with Trickery for the Trickery 2 trick, then the Rascal's Goggles. Otherwise, the Goggles of Piercing Gaze for the stacking bonus against outsider enemies, including demons. For cloaks, the Trickster Special Mythic Cloak is garbage, so you most likely want Cloaks of Resistance with the highest modifier possible. For the rings, I like the Ring of Guiding Star for the bonus to initiative, and also the Ring of Evasion to avoid Mythic Demon spellcasters' area of effect damage spells. For the braces, you have two options. The braces of the Heavy Hand, just like the Fencer's Gift gloves, will further increase the power of your offhand kukris or your weapon of choice. But since we are a Slayer, you can also go for the unique Slayer braces, the Phantom Slayer. Whenever you study an enemy, so whenever you hit them with a sneak attack, for the first time, they have to pass a Fortitude saving throw of 24 or become blind. 24, to be fair, isn't that high DC, especially since you only get this at around chapter 3. So now it's time to cover weapons and Quickslots. For weapons, I went with kukris, but I also have guides for the best rapiers and scimitars that you can check already in the video description or to the side here if you prefer to go with them. When it comes to kukris, early game you definitely want the first version of Finian for your main hand because of the Cold Iron property. And you can actually keep this when Finian gets his first upgrade at chapter 3 and ultimately the last one at chapter 5. Unfortunately, the +3 version of Finian was badly nerfed by Allcat recently to lose the Brilliant Energy property. Only the last version now has it. For a second powerful kukri, this one at chapter 2, the Radiant kukri, which has 1d6 extra positive energy damage on hit, and this hits any enemy. The enhancement might be low, but remember, you can just cast a Greater Magic weapon spell to increase any weapon's enhancement up to +5. As for chapter 3, that is when you can get the Shock Flaming Corrosive kukri. While it is true that since the nerf to Elemental Barrage, most demons will basically avoid the triple elemental damage, as always, you can rely on the super powerful Bane of Spirit Ring to convert everything into force, which is irresistible. You don't need it for trash mobs, but for the bosses and the tough enemies, I strongly advise you use it. As for the last powerful kukri, we have the Astringent Pacifier, which is the one I would dual wield with the last version of Finian for the endgame. As far as Quickslots, a Greater Quicken Meta Magic Rod is always a great boon for spellcasters, even ones that only use buffs like us, because you can quicken the Trick Fate spell, but you can always spread buff with it before battle too if you prefer. The Covenant of the Inheritor is just here because of how powerful it is overall, but since this works based on an aura, you can also leave it for other party members if you prefer. The Triceratops Statuette can give you a pet for free, even if you aren't a class that gets one like Slayer. If you mount it, you basically ignore armor class altogether. Just remember to buff your Triceratops AC instead. The Dragon Familiar Gisegax can help by adding extra damage to us. Just remember, Bane of Spirit helps a lot when it comes to this. Lastly, the Signet of House Vespertilio to increase any skill of choice, either Athletics, to make all saves, or Trickery, if you want the Trickery 2 trick. Well, so this was it for my Slayer guide. If you found it useful as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and even consider becoming a channel member for that extra support. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends. And feel free to leave any comment you want, including tips for other builds.